Stephen was one of the students that will always come to my mind because he had a severe disability, but it was otitis media. So they got that corrected and his speech then improved. And I had him as my class for 3 or 4 years. And one student who was in another class, he said, Miss Smith, you need to take so-and-so because he's having a reading problem. And Stephen looked up and he said, reading problem? I don't have a reading problem. I don't know how to read. I have to say he was my hero. Dr. Orton was a friend of Anna Gillingham's, and she was then teaching at the Ethical Cultures Institute in New York. And she and her companion, Bessie Stillman, developed the teaching methodology, but she believed it had to be one-to-one only. And you can see that's why she only trained 39 teachers in her lifetime, because she teach a lesson and then you would have to teach a lesson for her. That was her methodology. I can imagine how intimidating it was. But at any rate, she is the godmother, I should say, and Dr. Orton is the godfather of what we're talking about today. And as I said, they taught one-to-one only, but when Dr. Lucius Waits, his mentor, and I'm sorry I could not locate the name of his mentor, was the one that got him interested in dyslexia. Okay. And of course, his time at Scottish Rite Hospital was legendary. I mean, he just did so many good things for our children back then. And Dr. Waits knew his limitations in that he was an excellent diagnostician, but he wasn't a teacher. So he recruited Ailette Cox, who is my mentor, to come and work with him at the Scottish Rite Hospital. And at that time, all of the services there were free. There was no charge to anybody, which I don't think that's still true, and I can understand why. But anyway.
No, I think it's still free.
Is it still free?
I believe it is, yeah.
I haven't been in touch lately. But Dr. Waits, as I said, recruited Ailette Cox to come and do the teaching of the students. And so they were a wonderful pair. You know, he was an excellent diagnostician and she was an excellent teacher. And Ailette's, I think her greatest contribution was to develop a sequence in which to teach the curriculum. Yes. And she did do that. And but there were, when I took training at Scottish Rite, there was no curriculum to practice with. And that's, I had my principal, and I was a 6th grade teacher. My principal at the time threw down the gauntlet when he told me, he said, you know, after 2 years, they're gone and there's nobody to help them. They can't continue beyond 2 years. And I took that as an awakening of maybe what I needed to do, which became an odyssey for me, was to start writing down the teaching instructions, you know, for the program. There was no day-to-day practice, no activities for the students to practice. And I had been a classroom teacher, and I knew that without practice, there was no learning. My principal said that. He said, well, you know, after 2 years, there's nothing. And I thought, well, I didn't know how, but that became my mission, was to try to work out a way. And I thought the best way to do that was to write out detailed teaching instructions for the teacher to follow. And so that was my contribution.
when I was first being trained, there were a lot of old people that had been involved in it for a long time. And I'm not talking about her because she was young. They were very territorial, and they didn't like what this one was doing or for what that one was doing. And it just seems like that there was a lot of expended energy there that could have been expended doing something more worthwhile than worrying about that. And that really, honestly, we're all in this to help kids. That's our focus. It should always be our focus, and not, you know, who gets credit for what. When I graduated, I was working, my husband was still in college. And so I graduated in December. I got a job as speech and language pathologist at the Tri-County Co-op in East Texas. And when he graduated, so I had to get a job. And I started applying all these different areas. And a friend of mine from college, her brother was the temporary personnel director at Grand Prairie ISD. And so I went and interviewed with him. And of course, he knew I was his sister's friend. And so he said, well, Janna, he said, we don't have a speech therapy position open now, but we do have a resource reading position open in one of the middle schools. Do you think you would be interested in that? And then when a speech and language position comes open, then we can move you over in there, because it's under that special ed umbrella, speech was. So I said, oh, I love to read. I can teach reading. And it's so funny because when I was in college, I would, on spring break, I would come and observe Mother's classes. And she was teaching in Mesquite, and she was teaching alphabetic phonics in Mesquite. And so I'd watch her do all the cards. I was so impressed, you know, with what all she was doing. And it was very impressive, you know, the first time you saw it. And she was training teachers with ALET at the time at Dean Learning Center. And she just casually says, well, you know, Janna, since you're going to be teaching resource reading, maybe you should think about taking this course in the summer. And I was like, oh, okay, I will. I do think that a lot of the challenges are making sure that all your teachers in schools, school districts, receive that high quality of training,
right?
And that you stay true to the class sizes.
My training as a teacher, I knew that there had to be a skills hierarchy of practices to develop the mastery. I think we just need to know. It's like reinventing the wheel. You know, we think our work is done. It's never done. It's not. So we may change our position, our role, or our sphere of influence, but the work is never done, because the students that are the most difficult to teach are the ones that teach you the most.